Swords are the new meta, with weapons lead Chris Proctor stating there are some new sword meta options coming and that the first 4 raid encounters are all sword friendly. I thought it was time to make a build that fully takes advantage of the new sword meta and allows you to become the master of swords. This build allows you to become nearly invincible so that you can get up close and personal to deal some massive damage with your swords. The best part is it has some built-in flexibility so that you can also run this build with ranged heavy weapons like rockets or machine guns. So rally your fellow guardians, sharpen your swords, and get ready to become the new master of swords. Remember to leave a like if you find this video helpful, and if you like seeing build videos and other Destiny 2 helpful content, consider hitting that subscribe button. With that being said, let's jump right on into it. For a few months now, people have been talking about builds that use the Stronghold gauntlets are super strong, but whenever I used it, it just felt a bit weak. All of that changed with the final shape. If you liked your Stronghold build before, it just became even stronger. The artifact perks buffing swords, giving them more damage and ammo is massive, but the biggest update to this build is a lovely sword called Ergo Sum. Ergo Sum is an exotic sword that can be obtained by completing objectives in the Paleheart destination. And there are 2 things about this sword that make it perfect for this build. Number 1, it can roll with random exotic perks, so you can get a roll with Wolfpack rounds for more damage, Arc Conductor for more survivability, and many other very strong rolls. And number 2, it's a special weapon. My biggest gripe with this build last season is that when you faced a boss like a Hydra, Witch, or many other bosses that can't even be hit by a sword, your build becomes nearly useless. Now that you have a sword as a special weapon, the cases where you can't damage the boss with a sword, simply bring the heavy of choice to melt the boss, and this build now becomes viable in any activity. The other thing worth noting is that I really wanted to make this build a prismatic build, but honestly, it shines the most with the Strand subclass. So let's dive into the build and break down how it works. First up for our super. Blade Fury has always been a fun super to use, especially since it can suspend tough targets like champions. I mainly like to use it on bosses or mini bosses depending on the scenario. This is your only option, but it's a pretty strong one. As for the abilities, I like to take Rally Barricade. Rally Barricade is the best option since it has a shorter cooldown, but in hard activities like Grandmaster Nightfalls, I might opt for that Tower Barricade just for that extra protection. For the melee, you have Frenzy Blade. This is our only melee option, but it's fairly strong. The main thing to note is that it severs enemies. So when you sever an enemy, their outgoing damage is reduced by 40%. So I like to use a powered melee on a tough target like a boss or mini boss before I even start dealing damage to help with our survival even more. And for the grenade, I like to take Shackle Grenade, and I landed on Shackle Grenade for one main reason. We use swords and melees, which are all close range. So now we can use Shackle on tough targets to be able to make taking them out a breeze. The Grapple Grenade can be a ton of fun to use, but it's more for movement and pretty much easy activities only. So anything that's slightly hard, I'm gonna take Shackle Grenade. As for the aspects, first on our list is Banner of War, and Banner of War is the main reason why I landed back on Strand and not Prismatic. Banner of War provides you and your team with healing, extra melee damage, and 10% sword damage. And this is a sword build, so it felt wrong not having that extra damage. Plus, the healing from this and the restoration you get from strongholds helps you heal through any damage that you take. The second aspect that we're taking is Into the Fray. This aspect is just so good for you and for your team. Now, when you destroy a Tangle, it pulses out, giving anyone nearby health and Woven Mail. Easy activation of Woven Mail is massive, but this also gives you 300% increased melee regeneration whenever you have Woven Mail. And remember, that melee will sever targets, so being able to sever a tough target on demand is massive. When it comes to the fragments, the first one I'm taking is Thread of Warding, so that picking up an orb gives you Woven Mail. We want to have Woven Mail active as much as possible, and this just helps out a ton with that. The next fragment we're taking is Thread of Generation, so that dealing damage now grants grenade energy. Remember, our grenade is a shackle grenade, so we're able to suspend targets, and because you're using a sword, you need to close that gap, so being able to suspend targets more often will always be useful on sword builds. The third fragment we're taking is Thread of Propagation. Now, powered melee kills give your Strand weapons Unraveling rounds. I love to run a Strand primary with this build, and Unravel not only deals more damage, but will also create more tangles. Remember, those tangles give you Woven Mail and your teammates Woven Mail, plus increased melee regeneration, so creating more tangles is always going to be good. The last fragment is Thread of Fury. Since our melee severs targets and gives us Unraveling rounds, I bring Thread of Fury, so that damaging targets with a tangle gives back melee energy. If you find that you don't use your melee that much, I might swap this one out for Thread of Continuity, so that those targets that you suspend and sever will stay that way for longer. So the gameplay loop goes like this. Get a powered melee kill. This will proc Banner of War and create a tangle so that you can get Woven Mail. Then whenever you need to close the gap on enemies, guard to block nearly all the damage, and immediately deal damage with your sword to gain restoration ×2. After killing killing a few targets, feel free to swap to your primary and wipe out the rest. There are a few helpful tips to really master this build. Number 1, when you're approaching a tough target like a champ or mini boss, you have 3 options: suspend with your grenade, use your powered melee to sever them, or bring a tangle so that you have guaranteed woven mail. Number 2, try not to use your heavy attack with your sword. You need to have charge for your sword to be able to block in the first place. So if you use your heavy attack, you could get caught out in the open and die because you're not able to block. And number 3, this is a proactive build, meaning that you have to do things like proc Banner of War, activate woven mail, or even block with a sword before dealing damage. If you treat this build like a reactive build, you can get caught off guard and die. This build takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you have the gameplay loop down, it's really strong. With all the ways to heal and take less damage, you start to feel unkillable. So let's talk about ways to improve the build. First up, for your stats, I'm going for 100 resilience. We have so much healing from Restoration ×2 and Banner of War that damage resistance is the best thing you can do to help take any damage that you take, especially in content that is super hard like Grandmaster Nightfalls. After that, I like to shoot for a mix of strength and discipline, about 60 to 80 in both. The Shackle Grenade makes using a sword a breeze, and your melee starts Unravel, creates tangles, and even starts Banner of War if you run out. So both are pretty useful. Any leftover stats should go into intellect, since you don't really need recovery with all the ways you have to heal. When it comes to the armor mods, for our helmet, I'm taking Strand Siphon, so that rapid kills with our strand weapons create orbs. Orbs give us weapon damage, restoration, and radiant, so we need a ton of ways to create a bunch of orbs. And after that, I want to take both a heavy ammo finder and a special ammo finder. We want to make sure that we have ammo for our sword, and with Ergo Sum, you only get 39 ammo. So I'm adding in ways to get more heavy and special so that we can use our swords more often. When it comes to the gauntlets, I'm taking heavy-handed, so that powered melee kills now create orbs. It does have a 10-second cooldown, but you do have 3 separate melee charges to use. After that, I like to take impact induction and momentum transfer. Our melee and our grenade are both really helpful, so now we can use one to feed back into the other. And when it comes to the chest, I'm taking 3 resistance mods. I'm choosing 2 melee resistance and a concussive dampener. This is the baseline, so that you take less damage while you're using your sword, but ideally, you'd keep 1 melee resistance and then take 2 elements to match the activity you're running. When you're running this seasonal activity, there's a ton of void damage, so in that case, I'll take a melee resistance and 2 void resistance mods. As for the legs, I'm taking recuperation, orbs of restoration, and a weapon surge mod. Recuperation can give you the bump of health that you need to keep you alive if you're facing too many enemies, and since we want to use both our melee and our grenade, orbs of restoration will help get back whichever one needs it more. As for the weapon surge, I like to match it with whatever my main weapon is. For me, I like to use a strand primary and a heavy, so I use strand weapon surge, but if you're bringing a heavy sword, I'd match it to that element. And when it comes to the mark, I'm taking outreach, so there'll be 12% of our melee whenever we use our class ability to help cycle back to that melee even quicker. Then I'm also taking Reaper, so that we can generate orbs more often by getting weapon kills after we use that barricade, which is also why I'm taking powerful attraction. Orbs help with weapon damage, give us health, and ability energy, so now we can collect nearby orbs by using our barricade. When it comes to the seasonal artifact, there are a few mods that I really like with this build. Number 1, Saint's Inspiration. I really like the Strand Sidearm Breach Light, which is a part of the Saint 14 weapons, so now this will allow you to overload the mag with ammo by dealing melee damage. And number 2, I like Threaded Blast, so that destroying a tangle with a strand weapon makes a larger and more powerful blast. Since I do like strand weapons as my primary, this just equates to more damage. Number 3, I like Blade Stamina, so that rapidly killing enemies with a sword refunds ammo. This makes crowd control super easy, since now you can spam more sword attacks and have less consequences because you have more ammo. And the 4th one I also like to take is Argent Blade, so that dealing damage while you have armor charge consumes 1 armor charge and gives you increased sword damage and recharge rate. This is just a no-brainer for swords, since that'll now stack with our extra sword damage from Banner of War. I also like to take Radiant Orbs to occasionally gain Radiant for more weapon damage, and Shield Crush, so that we constantly have increased melee regeneration and damage because we basically constantly have Woven Mail active. When it comes to the weapons, for the kinetic slot, like I mentioned, I really like taking a Strand primary in this slot. With us wanting to be so close and personal, I've really been liking the new Breach Light, which is a 2-burst strand sidearm. With roles like Pugilist or Demo in the first column, you can get more ability energy, and then you pair that with Desperate Measures or Swashbuckler in the second column for just straight up more damage, which makes it really start to shred for a primary. For the energy slot, Ergo Sum is the clear number 1 choice for your special weapon, since it gives you options for whatever you want to use for your heavy. I personally like to take the wave frame with Wolfpack rounds. That way I can buff both my and my teammates' swords, but the frame doesn't really matter too much because you won't be using your heavy attack on your swords that often. The wave frame is just nice when there's a pack of adds that you can just easily wipe out. As for the heavy, I like to run Pro Memoria, which is a strand machine gun. It has the best arc archetype for a machine gun, and it allows me to run Strand Weapon Surge to amp up both my primary and my heavy weapon damage. Otherwise, you could bring another sword like Falling Guillotine with a role like Vorpal and Surrounded to deal a ton of damage, but there's just so many options for heavy. It mainly boils down to what activity you're doing. So there you have it, Guardians. We've covered a build that gives you a ton of healing, damage reduction, and even massive damage with your swords. And it even has the flexibility to take out those pesky flying bosses. Remember, mastering these builds is only the beginning. Experiment with different combinations, tweak your loadouts to suit your playstyle, and never stop honing your skills. If you found this video helpful or just enjoyed seeing a new perspective, feel free to like the video and comment down below what you might change or how you'd improve the Master of Swords build. Keep an eye out for future videos as we continue to explore the ever-evolving world of Destiny 2. Until then, may the threads of fate be ever in your favor. This is Lucky Mech signing off. See you on the next adventure, Guardians.